A while ago I saw an interesting argument. The person who argued it stated that the very type of politicians who generally support industry and business-friendly policies are often also the ones who oppose unlimited or much immigration, while the type of individuals who claim to represent workers, those type of politicians tend to be very for immigration and even for illegal immigration. And they saw this as a bit of a strange thing to be, because immigration generally allows more workers to exist, which benefits industry, while the opposite is true for the workers who support parties which also support immigration. So they thought it was a bit of a paradox of politics. And on the surface it is a paradox of politics. Why is it that the right wing tends to oppose immigration while the left wing, the workers, tend to support it when the immigrants are going to be competing with the workers for jobs? And the reason comes down to a difference between the classical conception of the state and of immigration and the welfare type of state. In a classical state, you have more immigrants, you have more workers, and they are contributing tax to the economy, they're contributing to the economy in many different ways, and it's the marketplace of ideas being expanded, there's more competition, and the state grows because it has more immigrants, and it's a good thing. You want those immigrants. The problem, however, even in a classical system, is infrastructure. If you don't have the infrastructure to support those additional people in the country, then there's a bit of a problem, because it limits the amount of resources available to everyone, and it becomes problematic. And with more people fighting over limited infrastructure, it damages industry and confidence in the country, and things go downhill. And so when having high immigration, you also need to have a high focus on developing infrastructure first to exist for the immigrants to come in and use that infrastructure and for business to grow. Now, it doesn't take a lot of effort or money to build infrastructure. What the biggest expenses of a state are on maintaining the civil service and on things such as social grants. And that's where things get especially tricky, because in a traditional model, the state simply provides the infrastructure and the security and the legal background for enforceability of contracts to allow business to do what it does best. And the state is outside of people's lives, except where it absolutely has to be there. And you even have systems where people build their own infrastructure, build their own roads, build their own schools. In South Africa, we actually have security companies which play the role of police in the more wealthy areas, and arrest people even for the police and hand them over. So the role of the state isn't quite what many people often perceive it to be these days. When you get to the whole nanny state type of conception, the conception of a social welfare system state, then immigration becomes quite tricky, because every new person who enters the country becomes a ward of the state, becomes someone the state is responsible for the welfare of. And you see the situation in Sweden right now, where you used to have cradle to grave social welfare, and they're closing down maternity hospitals and moving them elsewhere. They're closing down many of these systems which were seen as so vital in Sweden. And they're doing this because they cannot handle their social state with the addition of immigrants. And so when you have a welfare state and you have too many immigrants coming into a country, the problem emerges that unless these immigrants are actually bringing in value and succeeding with their work, then they are burdening the society. In a classical system, if they fail, they either need to leave the country and find opportunities elsewhere, or they eventually die, because the state is not responsible for the welfare of the people, including of immigrants. And in the classical system, you also have an idea of integration. So if a person is unable to integrate with the new society, unable to learn the new language, the values, and the culture, they're unlikely to succeed. There's no one propping them up and keeping them alive and well. And so, in that sense, integration has to happen for an immigrant to succeed in that country. Modern welfare states, they don't really need to integrate. And there's even talk of preventing integration. And you see the problem of that in places like Britain right now, where you have massive rises in rates of various crimes. You have crime waves all over the place, and you have horrible cases of rape and of abuse of women. Because people have come from countries where abuse of women is seen as acceptable, where you even have tribal elders ordering the rape of one woman because her relative raped someone else. So you have people coming from countries like that and not integrating, and therefore you have this massive wave of crime. When the Irish came to America, the way that they gained success was by integration. They integrated, they improved themselves, they educated themselves, and they worked their way up. Unfortunately, with the welfare type of system, you don't really get that. And so when you have immigration and you have a welfare state, you have a bit of a problem. The other place where a problem emerges is the nature of democracy. If you have so many immigrants coming in and you have a declining birth rate, as in Europe, and if the immigrants are not integrating into the society which is left, the society which has emerged from tolerance of a culture which is intolerant often, or which is very different from the host culture, is that the host culture disappears and the new culture emerges. And when this is starting to take place, this disappearing of the culture which has accepted the immigration, then you start to see both massive backlash from the people who realize what's happening, and you also start to see consolidation of power with people who have come in and taken over from a declining population. And this sort of interplay is especially noteworthy in the Tommy Robertson case in Britain, where a man reported on child grooming gangs, and because those child grooming gangs happened to be of a certain culture, the court decided this must not be reported on. Despite everything he said being in the public domain and known, the public realm of knowledge, he still got arrested and sent to jail for over a year, simply for reporting that child grooming gangs of a certain culture existed and were being tried at court. And where you don't have integration, you have a massive cultural war which emerges between the immigrants and the existing people. So the immigration question is actually a lot more complex than you might think it is. Because if you have immigration in a classical system, immigrants succeed if they integrate, and immigrants, if they fail, it's not the problem of the state. They might die early, whatever it is. But because there's no welfare state, because there's no big safety net, people are much more careful with their decisions, and it's been shown to massively reduce poverty. That's what you talk about when you talk about economic freedom, is the freedom to contract as you choose and to be held to your errors where you're wrong, and to gain your successes for yourself when you're right. So in the classical situation, immigration is a good thing and only a good thing for a country, where it's the right amount of immigrants coming in, that they aren't utterly changing the culture but rather integrating, and where the culture thus grows and thrives because the immigrants are helping it. You then get another problem which emerges, which is illegal immigrants. These are, again, people who emerge in the way that they do because of the modern state, which some people like to create, where you can't pay a worker less than a certain amount of money or you get in trouble. and where you have very strict labour laws not allowing you to fire or hire, as is good for your business. And so the illegal immigrant comes in, and because they are illegally in the country and can be deported, they accept terms which are much lesser than the terms which a local will accept, or which a local is bound by law to accept. And then you have these arguments, in America in particular, of who will do these horrible jobs if we don't have illegal immigrants to do them. Well, they're horrible jobs, and what about the legal immigrants? Do they not want to do them? And if they don't want to do them, and the only reason someone wants to do them is because they want to be in that country and they'll be deported if they get found out, and therefore are prepared to accept terms which are horrible, it's not really an argument for that, is it? It's more an argument of we want to mistreat these workers then. So that's not a good argument. What you really want from immigration is people coming into your country, improving the country, and adding to its fortunes and having loyalty to the country and integrating into the country's economy and integrating into its culture in a way which creates enough harmony that the marketplace of ideas can improve everything. And the best system for having immigration is your classical liberal type of system, where the state's job is not to look after everyone, but to provide the structures and the infrastructure in which people are able to create wealth and look after themselves.